Admiral Ramsey says in his report on Operation Neptune that, because in the event the movement of over 5,000 ships and craft proceeded smoothly and to plan, it may now appear that the size and complexity of the naval problem was somewhat exaggerated. This was not the case. Yet because of the late stage and ad hoc way in which procedures were adopted by the Allies, principally as the result of rehearsals for Operation Overlord, in particular as Slapton Sands, the logistics of Operation Neptune are not appreciated. In particular, Admiral Ramsey says the following: it was found necessary during planning to set up new organizations to control various aspects of the operation during the vital first few weeks, in which the tempo of the initial assaults had to be maintained at the highest pitch. Turco Turnaround Control Organization, Bucco Build-Up Control Organization, Corrupt Control Repair Organization, Kotite Control Tug Organization, accordingly came into being and were instrumental in the success achieved. A centralized control of ships and craft shuttling between the United Kingdom and the continent was needed to ensure flexibility and economy. Bucco principal functions were to control the build-up of personnel and vehicles and to set priorities for their movement as desired by the tactical commands and in line with available shipping and craft. Two subordinate organizations were established to act as executive agencies in carrying out Bucco decisions. At daily meetings, often held in the U.S. Army headquarters in Southampton Civic Center, Bucco made alterations in priorities desired by the tactical commanders and modified the planned allocation of shipping and craft. Any alterations of lifters between the Americans and British were arranged by Bucco with 21 Army Group, which was responsible for the allocation of shipping. Bucco broke down the modified priority lists into lists for the several embarkation sectors, showing the sequence in which units would embark in each. The lists were set up 3 weeks ahead of movement, and on the basis of this information MOVCO issued a force loading forecast for each embarkation sector, covering anticipated movements during the next 10 days. This data were subject to change, but provided the base sections and sectors with a basis for planning and preparations. More important were the force movement tables prepared by MOVCO. Distributed daily to base section headquarters, marshalling areas, and sectors, these tables covered a 24 hours flow into marshalling areas, showing the allocation of units to ports, the dates on which units would move to marshalling areas, and the priority of loading. The force movement tables served as instructions to transportation agencies to move units into marshalling camps, and provided the basis for breaking down units into ship and craft loads. This extract from Lieutenant Colonel George Dyer's book, 12th Corps Spearhead of Patton's Third Army, highlights the true complexity of Operation Neptune.
Of course, when we moved to Braemore, pronounced Bremer, says the Corps Company Sergeant, our only job was to get the 12th Corps and the Third Army to France. About 1/4 of Army had gone to France when we got down there. Major General John S. Wood was moving to France on the day I got down there. A shipping schedule had been worked out, but this broke down, due to some units being lost, others not arriving on time, or because of the inability to obtain proper equipment. Part of the company sergeant's job was that of making an educated guess as to just when a unit would be ready, and then assigning to it a shipping date. This schedule then had to be worked out with Bucco, who ordered the shipping. To add to the confusion, phantom telephone calls would be received from Army requesting that certain units be immediately shipped. Sometimes these units were not ready or had not even arrived. The connections were always bad and guesses had to be made as to just what unit and strength were required. At other times units would be ready ahead of schedule and the Navy had to be persuaded to take them as soon as possible, the joint aim being to keep the boats running continuously. 12th Corps, acting for Army, practically took over Cheltenham services of Supply Headquarters and ran it, but it required running the wheels off the jeeps to keep it going. What this meant in the 12th Comp staff sections has been excellently summarized by Major William B. Shop Shepherd, a friendly capable artillery officer out of Princeton, Fort Sill and Leavenworth. I was working in G3 troop movements, the hot seat for this operation, if ever there was one. We were responsible for moving all our corps, most of 3rd Army and 20 Corps, across the Channel. I never worked so hard in my life. The system for moving troops to the far shore was based on previously established priority tables, called build-up priority tables. There was Bucco Build-Up Control Organization at Southampton and Little Bucco on the continent. Little Bucco informed Bucco what troops to move. Bucco then sent movement orders to the Transportation Corps, Embarco, and to us. Embarco was actually supposed to move the units to the marshalling area. If that system had worked, the job would have been simple, but unfortunately many units were not equipped when they received movement orders. So they would be bypassed. That is where the complications started and did not end until we developed a closely coordinated system using all the special staff sections concerned, plus very close cooperation between G3 and G4. It was necessary to maintain daily lists of units that were ready to ship. These were sent to Bucco and I supposed further sent to Little Bucco, then Little Bucco called only for units that our G4 had certified as being ready for movement. Our job was mostly a bookkeeping one, maintaining daily long status lists of what units were ready, which ones were short critical items of equipment, which were alerted for movement to the marshalling area, and which had actually landed on the far shore. That the special staff as well as the general staff was being driven hard during these days is suggested in a recollection of Major Ed Johnson, on whose shoulders fell the ordnance burdens of the Z Group. We had a devil of a time with spare parts and all their ordnance equipment in order to replace combat losses, but as it was they arrived about 75% complete. As a result, we had to send them to the continent in a terrific rush and it was a race against time. The rear detachment did a wonderful job equipping the troops with artillery pieces to get them into the fight as quickly as possible. Naturally, not only ordnance was devoting special concern to artillery problems. This is General Lentz's picture of what was going on from his angle. We finally received a tremendous command. We were slated to cross the channel last. Due to the condition in France, all the timetables were pushed up, which created some confusion. I suddenly found that I had 48 battalions scattered all over England and I did not even know where some of them were. We had to get them equipped, listed on a priority list and get them across the channel. In order to do that we had to reorganize the supply setup, in so far as it related to artillery equipment. 12th Company's artillery also set up representation in General Lee's headquarters at Cheltenham. Thus, in a little more than the usual rat race, the last days of 12th Corps' period in England sped by. The stupendous flights of bombers flying overhead, by night and day, as well as the very nature of the job in hand, served as constant reminders that there was a war going on over there, and that 12th Corps was heading for it.
Outloadings of personnel and vehicles reached a peak in July 1944 and continued heavy through September. During this period there was some simplification of organization and procedures in the southern bay section. Beginning in July, troops scheduled for loading on deep-sea troop transports were entrained at concentration area camps and moved directly to the waterfront. In the following month, Marshalling Area C, which funneled units into Southampton, was turned over to the 14th Port. Previously, this marshalling area had been run by the sector headquarters, which had controlled the movement of units to the embarkation points. With this transfer, the area became the staging area of the 14th Port, which was given responsibility for the movement of troops from there to loading points. By the end of September 1944, a total of 1,462,426 personnel had been outloaded from the United Kingdom for the continent. According to U.S. Army records, the heaviest embarkations of men and vehicles were over the piers and Hearts at Southampton. In the period the 6th of June to the 6th of September, 1944, 686,868 personnel were embarked at this port on LSIs, MTVs, LSDs, LCIs, and LCTs, and 140,303 vehicles were loaded aboard MTVs, LSDs, and LCTs. Southampton also handled patients and prisoners of war evacuated from the continent. In addition, the port played an important role in the outloading of cargo, rolling stock, and bulk POL. Throughout, and until the end of hostilities, the port facilities continued to be shared by the Americans and the British on a day-to-day allocation made in accordance with the tactical needs.
Early last September, British forces captured Antwerp, with its vast harbour and railway yards all practically intact. For weeks afterwards, German defenders of the islands controlling the sea approaches to Antwerp fought bitterly to deny the Allies the use of the port. The ending of the Battle of the Scheldt marked a new stage in the war. It wrecked the German strategy of delay. Since then, 1 million tons of war supplies a month have been poured into Antwerp, Havre and Cherbourg alone.